Hello, welcome to Film Lovers. My name's Sonia Chung, where I'll be talking to people who work in the film industry and who are also avid film lovers. Today, I'll be talking to writer, filmmaker, and DP Maya Avidov. Hi, Maya. How are you today?
Hi, Sonia. I'm well. How are you?
Good. So you're in Tel Aviv at the moment, aren't you?
I am. I'm visiting family after a long break from the pandemic.
Were you situated in England before you went out there?
Yeah, I've been in London for 9 years,
Okay.
quite a while.
So when was the last time you got to see your family before it all started?
October 2019. It's
Wow.
been a long time. Yeah,
Yeah, that is a long
yeah,
time.
and yeah, we're now in almost October 2021.
That's
So it's
crazy, isn't it?
yeah, it's
It's like the whole year. Where did that go?
a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's quite yeah, quite sad. But
Ha-
it's fine. I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, no, they must be happy to see you as much as you are to see them. How long have you been out there for then?
About a week.
Okay.
Very very hot week. It's been very hot here.
Are you going to be there for another week or so?
Yep.
Yep. Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, okay. Well, Maya, why don't you start off by introducing yourself and tell us how you got into doing what you're doing. So, for instance, if you went to university, or instance, or just how you started off and what jobs you had to do in order to get into your career that you're doing now.
Okay, so I'm a writer, director, DP, which stands for Director of Photography. I have a very long education history. I studied still photography and fine art for many years before I started studying film, and then I went
Okay.
to and then I went to film school in Jerusalem at the Sam Spiegel School of Film,
Okay.
and I would break up my career into like two large parts, which is basically Israel and then the UK.
Okay.
So in Israel, I did. So I basically was thought for the longest time I'd be only a cinematographer.
Mm-hmm.
And then even though I was constantly being told by friends and colleagues that like I don't really talk like a DP, I talk like a director, which at that time I found very offensive. But I grew to love because I had worked with a lot of directors, and to me, directors at that time needed to be coddled. There was something very. Oh, I apologize. There
That's
was
right.
something very. Yeah, they like directors were a little bit. I think a lot of DPs view directors the way directors view actors,
Right.
as a bit of a like sometimes emotionally unstable.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
well, I mean, not that's not, but like they need a lot and they require a lot, especially in the indie world.
Mm.
Um, so anyway, I was a DP and I worked for many years as a DP, and then but I also while I was at film school, my day job was I was an assistant editor,
Okay.
and which is very rare for a DP to do. But basically, I went into editing rooms because I wanted to see what didn't make the cut
Right.
and how things put together. Because I
Mm.
figured from like a lighting perspective and a composition and movement perspective that I would learn a lot from practice, and I would learn and I would learn a lot from just like imagination and also coming from my stills background. But learning how they really come together, I would only learn in an editing room. So I did that, and I worked on lots of films, quite a few that were um, Oscar nominated, but nobody in the UK has ever heard of them because
Oh
the
my
UK
God.
doesn't really care about foreign films, even though the entire world is fighting to occupy 5 slots versus all the English speaking languages. Sorry,
Yeah.
countries that are like they have more things. Anyway, I was kind of so when I moved to the UK, I was kind of shocked at how I think I'm still quite shocked at how isolated it is in terms
Mm.
of its view of anything that isn't American or British.
Mm.
Ultimately, when the majority of films in this world that are made are not English speaking,
No.
and also just like how little these films got distributed. Like, there's no distribution in the like. I would speak to like British colleagues about super famous films, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So like,
Really?
yeah, there's like no interest, but also no.
Which is really sad because there's so many great foreign films out there that nobody's ever heard of because it hasn't had the exposure it deserved.
Well, everyone's heard of them.
Yeah.
except for people in the UK.
Right.
And occasionally people in the States as well. It
Mm.
is quite, I find it very surprising that it's, yeah, I just, like in Israel, like, for example, I'd say for a foreign film to get distribution for a week in the UK, it would probably have to win Cannes.
Mm.
And then it would probably only go to like London, maybe Manchester and Liverpool, maybe 5 screenings.
And that's it.
And that's it. Like a good example of that is like I can't remember his last name, Ruben something. He did False Majeure, which won Cannes, which is one of the best films of the past decade, and that like I think got like maybe 5 nights in the cinema after it won
Really?
Cannes, and then The Square, which he made, which is an English speaking film for the most part,
Sure.
partially, got full distribution. So it's a very like it's very bizarre. But anyway, so my career, I would say, spans into 2, which is like working in Israel, where I was working with like really great filmmakers who were doing quite interesting things. I worked on a lot of docs and fiction. That's another thing that in Israel, like, we don't differentiate between docs and fiction.
Mm-hmm.
We differentiate between docs and journalism.
Okay.
So a
Didn't
documentary
explain,
film. So a documentary filmmaker is only obligated to the truth of his film versus a journalist who's actually obligated to the truth.
Right.
So we don't expect to be educated by documentary filmmakers. We expect to see an artistic impression of what this person thinks of as reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very clever.
So like versus journalism that has a very different code of ethics. They both have a code of ethics, but it's quite different.
Can you think of some examples of directors who would do?
So I worked
Who
on
would
Walter
explain?
Shear, for example, which is like the first animated documentary.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting.
And that like was basically Ari, the director. He recorded conversations with friends of his. He then transcribed them. He then took those transcriptions, re-edited them into a script, hired actors to play that script, and then had animators animate what was shot. So,
Wow.
and that's documentary.
Okay.
But you have Avi Mugobi, who actually is just about to be awarded Doc Leipzig. He's like about to be awarded I think a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
And he does like amazing documentaries that are like super artistic and very expressive, mostly about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Sure.
But and about living in it. But they're, you know, some of them are musicals, some of them have animated. They are all like, they don't come from again like a journalistic opinion.
Okay.
They're not used as educational
Sure.
things. So the UK so everyone in Israel makes everything. You make what you can, and you make quite a lot. And film is film, and film is manipulation. You're not really obligated. So versus the UK, where like, you know, a doc filmmaker, which mostly means you want to make long form journalism.
Right.
Doesn't usually make anything else. Doesn't make fiction, and isn't seen as like capable really of making fiction. So that's really weird. That was a very big. That was another strange leap for me. Was sort of seeing like how segregated like genres are. So like. So yeah, and I also don't think of documentary as a genre. I think of it as a method, because you can have musical docs, you can have you can have thriller docs, all the genres that would exist in fictional film exist also in documentary film. So it's a methodology rather than a genre.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was what. So I worked here for a long time, and then I moved to the UK in 2012.
Is that in London?
Yeah, London specifically. Mm-hmm. And I had like a sort of a baptism by fire, I guess. Like I got moved without knowing. I didn't know anyone. And I moved to the UK because I speak English, and I had a European passport, which at the time meant something. And I have high respect for British actors. I mean, I really can't emphasize how much I have respect for British actors. I've seen British actors take the worst scripts and make them quite good.
Yeah. Which is what they have to do, don't they? I mean, there's some terrible films that got released in Hollywood, and if you think about it, like the big blockbusters, the scripts aren't the best thing in the world. But then the
But I'd
actors
say
know
in
that.
Israel it's the opposite. So we have great directors and great scripts, and the actors aren't that great.
Oh, really? It's the other way
Yeah.
around.
So I always think of it as sort of like in the UK, like the filmmaking is kind of here, but the acting really elevates it. And in Israel, I see it as the opposite.
Right.
I have a friend who who was at my film school in Jerusalem, who went to film school in Austria and Vienna to Haneke's film school, and Haneke like really likes Israeli films. And he said, "Oh, Israel, you have lots of good actors." And my friend says, "You clearly don't speak Hebrew." And Haneke also laughed, and I said that sounded to me like the most petrifying concept in the world of Michael Haneke laughing is scary. Just the idea of it.
Yeah.
So I moved to the UK, and after having like never looked for work really in Israel, always just had work, I promptly didn't work for 5 years.
Wow.
Because I found out that nobody in the UK cares about anything that happens outside of the UK unless it happened in Hollywood, and even then, they don't really care.
That's pretty bad, isn't it? That's quite. It is really awful when you think about it.
It is what it is, I suppose.
Mm.
I was just really shocked because and I think I've spoken about this with lots of immigrants. You think of London as this very worldly place, and it isn't.
No.
It's its own microcosm, and it doesn't like it thinks that the only place to go to is the States. Like it doesn't like that's the only way up.
Yeah.
Does that make which is probably why people also don't learn other languages. But the truth of the matter is that like France, Germany, India, Nigeria have massive film industries, and
well, especially India. I mean, I think Bollywood make twice the amount of films that Hollywood
yeah, and so
do.
does Nollywood in Nigeria.
Is that Nollywood? Wow.
Yeah. I think that's like the largest film industry in the world.
Really? So do you think it's overtaken the Indian Bollywood?
Yeah, but again, I think it's very. I think Bollywood, from what I've seen of Bollywood versus Nollywood, I would say that Bollywood by far have better production value.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also like, I think I could be wrong, but I think in India, filmmaking is the third largest industry.
Wow.
So it employs a lot of people. So it's a big part of their. Yeah, it has serious significance.
Sure.
So yeah, so I didn't work for many years, and I kind of kept taking jobs in Israel to keep going. I applied for an insane amount of jobs. So I basically learned kind of the hard way how to write a cover letter, which is really like I had never really experienced it. It took many years for and someone to reply to any of my CVs, even though again I had 4 Oscar-nominated films on my CV, but just
it's crazy, isn't it?
Nobody had heard of it. I had an interview with a film company, like, I don't know, I must have been in the UK at least 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And I had an interview with someone to like try to like whatever get pretty work that I was definitely overqualified for, and like an entry position. And I had gotten it because this person basically, one of the partners was Israeli, and I met a different partner, and he said, "Oh, you worked on Waltz with Bashir. We love that film.
Wow.
We would never have made that film. We still would never make that film." And you're like, why would you not make a film that got international distribution, was nominated for an Oscar, won several like significant awards, and he's like, yeah, it's too risky. And you're like, but it's already been proven that it isn't risky. Anyway, I felt like that was very so that was kind of very eye-opening as to like where it is that I live right now.
So were you doing in between working on projects? Were you just trying to pick up on any work that came your way?
Yeah, I was doing any work. I was doing still a lot of work in Israel, like remote work at the time. I was like, so a lot of like Israeli cinema was relatively quite successful, and I was doing a lot of translations of scripts for labs.
Okay.
I was doing I was shooting like stuff within London for Israeli productions that needed like people in London to shoot. I was doing like kind of this and that, whilst continuously always like applying for open briefs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, and like really kind of not getting anywhere for the longest time. I mean, so I kept applying, not even like passing the first round.
Wow. Which must have been very frustrating for you, I'd imagine.
I mean, I've still never gotten money from lots of like well-known I mean, I think that it's very. If you were to look at like, if you were to look at like, actually do an evening and look at like the films that get made with public money, it's a very clear tone,
Yeah.
and maybe not the tone that I created.
Mm.
And so, and then the first thing I got actually money for, I got like 500, literally 500 quid, which was like nothing, to make a short film for the British Library via Ideas Tap.
Okay, that's really good.
Which was an organization that promptly closed after George Osborne became chancellor. They couldn't survive the cuts,
Yeah.
and they were like quite. And again, and it was like my last year that I could apply for them because they had a cutoff date of you had to be under 30.
Wow.
Which a lot of funds, by the way, have.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of funds have the cutoff date of 26 and 30.
Okay.
Which is insane.
That is mad.
And you'd think illegal, but it isn't apparently. Anyway, so so I did that, and that was really fun. And that was a short film I made called The Natural Habitat, which is like a parody of like classical music to an extent. The brief was to make short film kind of that brief had these like wildlife sounds. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend of mine basically compose a short like 3-minute composition of music only from wildlife, and I had actors act like a choir.
Okay.
And that's called The Natural Habitat. And then I basically kept sort of everything I've made in the UK has been self-produced and self-funded, so I just kept making more and more short films. And then right now I'm actually finishing a short film that I shot about 6 months before the pandemic started, and then I shot the finishing day kind of right in between lockdown 2 and 3. There was like a window in which I got like one day.
Oh, it's very lucky timing.
Yeah, it was really lucky. Like literally the day after everything had scheduled, they had announced that 4 days later there would be another lockdown. So I was very fortunate. And you asked me how the pandemic has affected me. I would say that mostly it affected me in the sense that I couldn't be in the same room with my editor, which is
a bit tricky when it comes
really difficult and really kind of not how I like to work at all. I don't really edit for myself, but it's very important for me to be in the same room with the editor and to work collaboratively. I don't really like to send off material and get cuts back. I feel like
Well, you especially the director, you want to be there and kind of have a sort of say about how you want it to come out.
What else could be?
Yeah,
because you weren't there for all the experiments,
exactly.
Right? You only get like what they think currently works. And I have a really great editor, but still, like I was like I need to be slightly more. I don't think I micromanage at all, but I do think that I would get the cut, and I would only wonder about like what I'm not seeing, even if it worked.
Yeah.
Which it did. I'm happy to say. So anyway, now I'm in the final stages of editing that, and I hope it'll be done by the end of this year. So
cross fingers.
Cross fingers. That took way longer than I had anticipated it to take because of the pandemic, ultimately.
So you had to, I guess, raise your own money for that then, unless.
Yeah. So I have a day job where I'm an archive producer for quite a lot of shows, quite a lot of television. I'd saved enough money to make a film, so I did that. And also, it was very ironic because I shot it, of course, in my own house and stuff like that. And I thought I was doing it on the cheap because, like, I wasn't paying for location. It was only 2 actors, blah, blah, blah. It came out the same as if I hadn't shot it in my house.
Really?
Yeah, because, like, things add up.
Sure.
And I had really good actors, and I'd pay them,
so much money.
And I had a great casting director. Like, it's kind of, I had, really good, the amount of things I didn't pay for, and yet that it still came out like an average film is quite, because everyone got paid, even though, like, I kept the gear to a minimal and all that.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's, that I hadn't made a film at that point for 3 years, and it's weird how I had forgotten
how much?
So many things like that. There's no such thing as doing things cheaply.
No.
Even if you're getting like a lot of free stuff, like it was still like this. Yeah, I mean it could have been more, obviously, but it was still like quite a lot of money. But I'm very pleased with it. It's a very performance based performance focused short film. It's like there's no cool shots. It's not. There's no. I keep saying that. Like I think of it as like the metaphor I keep using is like it's like mashed potatoes. So mashed potatoes can either be the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world.
Oh, a bit like Marmite.
Yeah, or like right. So you only have like 3 or 4 ingredients, right?
Yeah.
They have to kind of come together, and it's in the technique of how that makes them great,
Comes
or
together.
just regular kind of yeah. So like that's kind of how I've been thinking about it. So yeah, I'm quite excited about it. I think I think it's one of the first short film I've made that like is really is so like solely like performance focused, and really I'm quite like pleased with. I'm really happy with the actors. I think that they did a really great job. And again, like I have such a love and admiration of like British actors that like I finally feel like I got to like put that in motion and just like focus on them. So yeah, that was. So I'm looking forward to it.
When you're hoping that will come out?
Before the end of the year, I hope it'll be done, and then we'll send it to festivals and see what happens.
The festival runs hard work, isn't it? Are you doing it by what was? There's that website which sends them off to every one of them.
There's Film Freeway is like
that's it.
That's like the platform through which. But I'll probably I might send to a few. There are these like festival strategists.
Mm-hmm.
So I might send it to a few of them first to ask how they think I should distribute it. See what they say. Take it from there.
It's a very long, interesting, difficult process, isn't it? Everyone thinks it's easy, but no, it's just like any other product. You have to go through various.
I feel like also with like short films, as a person who works on like quite a lot of features and quite a lot of television, I understand why people stop making short films, because they end up, a lot of them, costing as much as a feature. Like I have a friend who produced a film which she said a short film which she said was low budget, but it was $50K, and you're like, that's not low budget.
No.
but honestly, it is if you were to divide it. I'm sorry, it's not low budget. It's quite a lot of money if you were to divide that money per minute of screen time.
Sure.
This is like, I know I have a lot of friends who make like indie features, and they're like, it takes the same amount of energy and almost the same amount of time to make a feature. Why would you make a short? Which I totally get. Although I personally love short film. But so yeah, and I always say that like about short films, and I think that most people who've made a short film have experienced it, that like they shot it over 2 or 3 days and then they edited it from 6 to 8 months, right? So like, because a lot of times, there isn't that much money to like block out a room and post or whatever, so you're kind of doing it in between, and things just take time.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Especially if you're working on something that's probably a much longer film than that's.
Yeah, I mean, even a short I made this short film for the Listener project a few years ago, which is this great duo of producers who like building industrial buildings that are about to be like destroyed or probably made into like luxury flats. They go in and they get like 4 filmmakers and they give them each 4 rooms at random, and they give a day to make a film in that room. So I made a film called The Listener for them at a mannequin factory. It was very cool.
Oh wow!
I got the warehouse section, and then I basically had a day to write, a day to cast, and a day to shoot, which is very fast. But then like the edit was 7 months long, so. That's super common. Like in film school, you also have that. You like work for like, let's say 2 or 3 months on pre-production, and then shoot for, let's say, anywhere between 2 and 5 days, and then edit for another 8 months. That just seems to be, and these are people who like that's all they were doing. It wasn't like because they're
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very common. I totally get how much work goes into a short film and how similar it is to making a feature, but for less screen time.
Sure. There was a question I was going to ask you, because you're the first female filmmaker I've spoken to.
Right.
Why do you think it is that there just seems to be more male filmmakers than there are females? Do you think that's changing?
No, I think that's totally changing.
Which is really good, because there's a different perspective I think female directors can bring onto
it. It is, but we're always like only allowed to make female stories, whatever that means.
But you know what? I was thinking, what's her name? Catherine Bigelow. she's
Catherine Bigelow is an amazing anomaly, but there isn't another one like her.
yeah, because you know what
Except for like Lana Wachowski, who started out her life not as a female. I can't think of one other female action film director.
yeah, because
So like she's very unique, Catherine
well,
Bigelow.
she
And
is.
also, yeah, sorry, but
No,
also
no, no.
like the other thing that's super unique about it is that almost all of her protagonists are men, which is
Yeah,
very rare for a female director.
yeah, that's true actually.
It's
Because
yeah, it's you're almost ostracized for. Like I was just telling, I told my friend yesterday, I did this film night for like female filmmakers, and I was talking to like a bunch of I was, we were like mingling before, like I was being introduced to the other filmmakers on the bill, and they asked me what was my film, and I said, well, it's probably the only one with a male protagonist, so it'll probably stand out. And
mm,
they looked at me and they're like, why would you have a male protagonist?
really,
Yeah, I was like, it's how the script came out. I
yeah,
don't,
yeah,
but it is. I think if you ask like why there are more male filmmakers, I think that like filmmakers exist where the money is, and I think if men get more money to make films, there'll just be more male filmmakers. That's just like the statistic of it.
yeah.
I think that like
There definitely needs to be more female filmmakers.
yeah, but I think that there needs to be more. In my taste, there needs to be more female filmmakers like Edgar Wright and Catherine Bigelow.
Mm.
I don't see any like even I don't see any female filmmakers, and I'm saying this like specifically being allowed to make women's stories, however they're defined by the industry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Versus like men, and specifically white men, are allowed to tell any story they want,
Mm.
and women are like kind of they have to tell their protagonist has to be female, or it's always a certain like thing.
Yeah.
Versus
Which,
like if you want to write, if you're a female or a person of color and you want to write, let's say, a comedy with two white male leads, you're never making that film. That film, nobody wants to support that film.
really, that's bad though, isn't it? When you think about it.
I mean, it's definitely profiling, and it has nothing to do with the merit of the script of the film.
Yeah, that's really. It's sad actually. I mean, I know it's gradually changing.
Yeah.
Like you're beginning to see more races of actors in films. They're not so typecasted. There aren't so many white actors out there.
No.
Which, I mean, what was that name of that series that was on Netflix? Where they're all like the hierarchy. It was like these dukes, and it's amazing because you had like black actors and Asian.
Oh right, yeah.
And it's just like, well, yeah, why can't that be done? You know, there's so many amazing actors and like you guys, amazing talent going on out there in the world. So it's a shame. I mean, I know it's gradually changing. I do remember when I was in college, we did a term of avant-garde films. We had to write an essay about at the end, and one of the films we saw, and I don't think we got told it was a female director till the very end when we were like analyzing the film, was the one with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze that you did.
Point Blank.
Point Break. And
that was defined as avant-garde.
Well, there were bits of it with the way the color, the blues and things. I mean, it was a long time.
It's a heist movie.
It is a heist movie, but there's scenes where I can't remember. Maybe it was something else, but there were bits of it with the way she used color and stuff of it. But yeah, it's been a very long time. But it was just a clip. It was either a clip of it or the whole thing she showed us. I can't even remember, to be honest. But you wouldn't have thought that was. I mean, we were kind of shocked when we realised that was a female director, because it's like you said, it was a very manly film. They're all men, really, aren't they? In that film,
all of her films, Hurt Locker, Detroit,
The Hurt Locker as well,
States, which is like one of my top. Like I love that film. Yeah, I think she makes films.
Yeah,
I don't think she makes female films.
No.
I think she just makes films. Like I don't think that, even if you look at the female counterpart, played by, I can't remember, Laura or something, the surfer chick that like
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
deals with Keanu Reeves. So she,
But she seems to be the only one in it, I think.
yeah, but she is the only one in that world. She's not. There's no tokenism. I think. Like I
No.
totally believed everything about her, and like she's, and she's also like not overtly anything, right? She's not really a tomboy. She's totally secure in her femininity. Um, there is something about the way Catherine Bigelow like directs her characters as simply people rather than gender performances. I think that like repeats itself a lot, and that's probably why, like her, but like yeah, and she's just very talented and also super fortunate because I think she came up in a time where there was no there were so few female filmmakers that it wasn't expected of a female filmmaker to make this type of film.
No, not at all.
So she makes really great action movies. I mean, she truly does, and like that's I really there isn't another one like her. Sadly, but I feel like now maybe with like the Marvel films, there are more female filmmakers making action films, but they're also like comic book movies, which is a bit different. That's a bit of a more like, well, camp. The word camp comes to mind.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But do you know what? Because it's funny because we're talking about female directors. I remember when I was 22. It must have been and I remember seeing Lost in Translation. So that's another one. Sofia, is it Coppola? Coppola, who's I can't even remember his name. The one who directed the Godfather films.
Oh yeah, Francis Ford Coppola.
That's it. She's his niece, isn't she?
Daughter.
Daughter. Okay. But that was an amazing film, Lost in Translation.
Yeah, I think she does.
Did she win an award for that? I know
it won screenplay. I think.
I love Lost in Translation.
The first female screenwriter to win that award.
Okay.
I think that's a great film, and I think that it is a very feminine film.
Yeah.
Like a beautifully feminine film.
I mean, it mainly follows her, doesn't it? I mean, it follows her meeting him.
Yeah, I think that the Bill Murray character definitely has his own storyline for sure.
Yeah. Their chemistry was really good.
For the longest time, she was like, yeah, I really adored a lot of her films, and I thought that she does. And this is not a diss in any way because I think she really adds quite a lot of depth to it. But I think she does girly shallowness in a truly authentic way.
Really?
Like I think that she like a bit like maybe like The Stranger, like Camus, like she does apathy in a really really
good way.
I think she's really like she has a lot of depth in her girliness. And yeah, I think that's like quite. Yeah, I think Lost in Translation is a really great film.
Yeah,
and it's so beautifully shot.
It is. It's
like iconic.
It's her love letter to Tokyo, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think so. I remember at the time when it came out, reading a review of it, which put it really well. She says it's the most accurate description of being a foreigner in a foreign land.
It is.
Yeah, I think it does that very well.
And you know what's funny is that you're probably a bit like me because you've traveled so much, and I went to Hong Kong a few times because my dad was over there, and then also I studied Mandarin in Shanghai, and you kind of, and I remember feeling, especially in Shanghai, you kind of feel like that. Do you know what I mean? Like her being in Tokyo, because it's hard to explain, but it's exactly like that. You feel the kind of like there's the language barrier, there's the fact that you kind of stand out so much, and that there's very few white people walking around. Do you know what I mean? And it's you do feel completely lost in that kind of.
Yeah, especially if you don't speak the language, and also there's no accountability, right? Like you don't have to be anywhere at any time. You can totally reinvent yourself, or you can kind of not I think that she's quite lost there.
Well, nobody knows her, do they? And that's,
her husband, she's like waiting for her husband to finish a gig, right?
Yeah, and her husband's not really spending much time with her, is he? He's not ignoring her, but she feels completely lonely. She doesn't know who she's married, and it's so she's
I
So
think
she's
so.
kind of lost in that.
She's been left to her own
Devices.
devices,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and also kind of maybe like trying to imagine or trying to figure out who she
Who she is.
who she is when you take away all your friends, your family, the language you know, any type of like commitments
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have. What is left? Like who are you?
And he's kind of like the opposite, isn't he? Because he's a family man, but he's been married for many years, and he's kind of a bit like he's not a washed up actor, but he's kind of past the prime of his
Yeah, and he's
acting.
also like, I think he's lost the like integrity of his youth. I think there's a line there where she asks him what he's doing there, and he says, "I'm doing a commercial for money rather than a play somewhere that could have actually."
Yeah, because he's doing a commercial for whiskey, isn't it? And it's that famous line.
I have total theory. Like that. By the way, I don't think that film is really a work of fiction. I think that totally all happened, and I think it's very clear. Like Giovanni Ribisi, that plays the husband, is clearly doing Spike Jonze, who's married at the time to Sofia Coppola.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson is clearly acting like Sofia. I mean, like to a T. And I have theory about who Bill Murray is, which I think he's Gene Hackman. And the reason I think he's Gene Hackman is because there's a scene where he comes across one of his old movies in the television. And it looks exactly like The French Connection, which is a Gene Hackman film.
Okay. Well, that's a really interesting notion.
And I think Anna Faris is Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, no, I read that. She was based...
Oh, she is?
I read that. She was based on the ditzy blonde actress.
Yeah, but also, like, it makes sense that it is actually Cameron Diaz. Cameron Diaz later on is in John Malkovich, which is a Spike Jonze film.
Yeah.
So, like, but there's, like, just the way she acts is so
I did read that she was loosely based on Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, I don't know how loose it is, because, like, I saw it and I was like, oh, it's, especially when she's like, I'm under the name of Evelyn Waugh. And then they're like, and then she walks away and the Scarlett Johansson character says, Evelyn Waugh was a man.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought that was very much like somebody slightly getting even with somebody else. And then like Giovanni Ribisi's character is all like, not everyone went to Yale, and me being who I am, but it's like, yeah, but everyone can go to the library.
Yeah, exactly.
Like totally open to people. Anyway, I think that film is very, is very like different. And I think that like you couldn't find two different filmmakers from Sofia Coppola and Catherine Bigelow. No. They're like completely not in the same
league. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, I've enjoyed our chat.
Yeah, no, I did too.
It's been very fun, and thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And we'll be seeing you in the next episode where you'll be giving us a rundown of your favourite films from the 90s.
Brilliant.
All right. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.